The ACC and bowl season has been not bad.
You are Locked On ACC, your daily podcast on the Atlantic Coast Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome in a Locked On ACC. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. That's Kenton Gibbs, host of Locked On NC State Wolfpack. Thank you so much for making Locked On ACC your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're always free and available wherever you get your podcasts on the #1 sports podcasting network. And on today's show, we are going over some of the big bowl games over the weekend in the ACC. And so far, the conference in general has been pretty good this bowl season. So all that and more coming up here on today's show. And before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by Rougier. If you've ever been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rougier.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougier ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. I think for the ACC this bowl season, Kenton, it's been pretty good. I mean, the overall record, if you count Miami, is 4-4. But you also have to keep in mind, Miami is one of the 8 teams remaining that is still playing in the year of 2025. Most college football teams are right now preparing for the transfer portal. Miami is simply preparing for Ohio State, which is going to be on Wednesday night. But let's start off talking about some of the bowls over the weekend. On Saturday, you had Georgia Tech versus BYU. Kenton, what are your thoughts on this one?
You know, it was a really, really good game, really valiant effort by Georgia Tech, but that was a spectacular showing by both teams. And I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, when I watched that game, I walked away saying this is the essence of what college football is. That was 2 teams that were extremely excited to be there. That was 2 teams that wanted to lay it all out on the line. And they were led by 2 quarterbacks that know, with all due respect, both Backenmeyer and Haynes King, they know that their NFL prospects are limited. They know that. They know that they're not the prototype of what NFL offenses are looking for. And yet and still, they put on the best shows that they could. And so I look at that game and I say, congratulations for putting on a hell of a show for both of those teams. Obviously, as Locked On ACC, we wish Georgia Tech would have got it done. But to see Haynes King deliver one on a dime down the sideline to get them that close to be able to potentially close that thing out with a game-winning TD, it was a great game. It was an exciting game, and ultimately we came up short. But, you know, I will say ACC bowl season overall so far, to me, I struggle to say it's been anything outside of really great to fantastic. The ACC is a conference, and I know what you're thinking. 4-4, what do you mean anything short of great or fantastic? The ACC is the only conference with a top 10 win in the postseason so far. That's not interconference. That's it. It's just us. The only other top 10 win was Alabama over Oklahoma. That was it. 2 SEC teams. So technically, you're not measuring your team against another conference's big dogs as a measuring stick. We got that accomplished. And then when you look at the losses, I would say, hey, you take some of those on the chin. Obviously, the Pitt loss is probably the biggest, most glaring. You take that on the chin. And the Clemson losing to a team that did not have a head coach and it has a lot of their guys in the portal. You don't want to see that. But other than that, Cal didn't have a head coach. You're kind of not, are you overly surprised about that Cal team in that situation and that being the result? Not really. Other than that, you've seen teams in the playoff, or not in the playoffs, but in this postseason, you have seen ACC teams do what they're supposed to do, especially one that we're going to get to a little later in UVA pulling off the upset of Missouri.
We will get to Virginia and Mizzou. First of all, by the way, Georgia Tech lost that game to BYU 25-21. I should have mentioned that. I think you hit the nail on the head as far as ACC representate or how they represented the ACC by Georgia Tech. But I also have to throw this out there. What a tough way to end
Yeah.
Like, it's just Georgia Tech this season. They started 8-0. They were 9-1. They recovered from the loss to NC State by getting a thrilling win over Boston College. It felt like maybe they had saved their season with that win. And then they closed the year by losing 3 straight and getting shut out in the second half of the Pop-Tarts Bowl, where Haynes King, the entire game, by the way, only had 7 carries. Haynes King only 7 carries. It makes you think, really? Haynes King is best when he is really getting out in space and he is running the football. So I didn't love that. And I can't help but think this about Georgia Tech. If this was truly the year for them, it felt like this was it for Georgia Tech. Like, I still think they can be a good, solid program in the ACC, but it felt like this was their opportunity to have a year where they get to the college football playoff. You had everything going for you. You had Haynes King. You had the offensive coordinator. You still have the head coach. So Brent Key, he knows what he's doing over there. But now you're losing Haynes King. You're losing your offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner. And you're losing your quarterback succession plan in Aaron Philo. So is Georgia Tech next year going to be remotely close to what they were this past season, where at one point they were 9-1 and looking like the team that was going to represent the conference in the CFP?
I mean, you're not wrong. 1-4 down the stretch is rough. But here's what I also want to let people in on in terms of those looking at Georgia Tech saying, oh, well, we told you their early season success was a fluke and so on and so forth. Here's the deal, right? Of the 4 games that they lost going down the stretch, because if you want to say, well, they won a bunch of close games early in the season and, you know, some of those they needed help from the officials and so on and so forth, that same energy can be applied to this 1-4 down the stretch. Of all of those games that they lost, of each and every one of those games they lost coming down the stretch, only 2 were by double digits, NC State and Pitt. Georgia, a team that many people feel like is the favorite to win it all this year, you lose by 7. BYU, a team that their only 2 losses on the season came to a Texas Tech team that is undefeated when their starting quarterback plays. So you're looking at a situation where you're saying this team is on the precipice of greatness, but you do have to ask that question. The only problem is this, Jackson. We're in college football. This ain't the NFL where you've got a finite window with these guys. And it's like, hey, you're going to have to pay everybody. And you can't pay everybody. And this guy's coming up and that guy. Objectively speaking, if we're looking at Brent Key doing this, and mind you, this was him as a first-time head coach. This was his first time ever managing. Well, how do we handle 8-0? How do we do this? What does this look like? And for reference, Georgia Tech had not had that record since World War II. Huh?
That's a long time ago.
That's how long it's been.
World War II.
That's how long it's been since they had that type of record. So when we talk about that, I want to make it clear that we have to give this proper perspective in terms of, I think Brent Key's going to figure it out. He's figured out how to put together a winning product. Good on you. But now you've got to figure out how to break that ceiling, because right now he's pressing up against that thing. You've got to find a way to break it and turn Georgia Tech into that national powerhouse, which, I mean, they're in Atlanta. They're right there in the territory, hotbed of talent. They're in a place where you can pull some really, really great players. So ultimately, this is a team, I don't think they've hit their ceiling just yet, but I do understand people who think so because of the 2 quarterbacks leaving and whatnot. I think they'll be just fine. Give it some time.
What you described in terms of breaking that ceiling and becoming a powerhouse, that's the hardest part. For a lot of coaches, they can build bowl teams. They can build teams that could maybe, start 8-0 or have a 9-win season. It's, can you build a team eventually that can compete for a national championship? That's the hardest part right now in college football. You're losing Haynes King. You're losing the offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner. You're losing Aaron Philo, who was the quarterback succession plan. And so we'll see what Brent Key is going to cook up this offseason and whether or not Georgia Tech can at least replicate the success they did have in this 2025 season. But you want to know a team that definitely had a lot of success this season? Virginia. And they got themselves a nice bowl win. So we'll talk about that next on Locked On ACC. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night, and when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rougiette Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rougiette Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, well, now's the time. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnCollege. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rougiette Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. The SEC has fallen. Just kidding. But the SEC did lose a bowl game to the ACC. You have Virginia knocking off Mizzou in the Gator Bowl. It was a real offense barn burner. And by that, I mean Virginia won the game 13-7. Kenton, I'm just going to tee you up right now. Have at it.
I love this. I love this so much because, number one, I've talked ad nauseum about how much Elliott deserved good things, but we know this is college football. It's not about what you deserve. You don't get it. You get what you earn. And this team earned a tough win. And the interesting thing is, I find it so funny how all of a sudden everybody becomes the context cops when the SEC loses. There was no context cops when the ACC had a bad bowl season, when we had some bad luck. But now that the ACC, by the way, that's multiple teams that were ranked for a majority of the year, if not all of the year, that the ACC has beaten at this point, in terms of Texas A&M beaten by Miami, and now Mizzou beaten by UVA. The reality is, you could talk all you want about, oh, there's all these opt-outs, didn't matter for the ACC. When people talk about Georgia putting that shellacking on Florida State after Florida State was up for the playoffs a few years ago, folks don't talk about the fact that a vast majority of Florida State's two deep was gone. People don't talk about that. They just say Georgia played that game and dominated them by 50. They didn't say, well, Verse didn't play, Fish didn't play, this guy didn't play, that guy didn't play. All these NFL guys did not play because nobody cared. It was about, this is the end result. This is what happened. And the end result of this game, which, by the way, Missouri had a top 10 edge in America, according to the draft boards playing. Missouri had multiple guys who are going to be playing on Sundays playing. So ultimately, I look at this game and I say, shout out to you, Tony Elliott. Shout out to you guys. You did what you needed to do. You got a tough, hard-earned win. This wasn't easy, but they got it done just like they have all year by out-physicaling teams. Because whether you believe it or not, Virginia has been a team that has run the ball on people all year. All year long, that's what they've done, and they did it again in this one. And also, Tony Elliott took some really brave choices and some really bold moments to go for it on fourth, and it worked out for him more often than not. This was a masterclass by Tony Elliott, who is known as an offensive guy, won a ugly slugfest rock fight type of game. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's not who can get to 50 the fastest. It's who has one more point than their opponent when that clock strikes 0. And ultimately, that's what UVA did in this one. Shout out to the Who's.
Virginia clinches an 11-3 season. Not quite its best season since World War II, but it is its best season by win percentage since 1952. So 7 years later. Not bad for Virginia this season, a team that didn't necessarily have the highest expectations. And lo and behold, they go to the Gator Bowl, they play an SEC team in Mizzou, And they got the job done. I think, like you said, nobody was saying, oh, Florida State, when they played Georgia, they had all these other players that were out, and Georgia actually tried in that game. Florida State really didn't because, well, they kind of got screwed out of the college football playoff. That's another conversation for another day. But you're right.
Mm-hmm.
There was no sympathy for Florida State in that bowl game against Georgia, but so with that being said, we're not going to give the sympathy for Mizzou or any context or the fact that Matt Zollers is simply not a very good quarterback, and maybe he should not have been playing anyway for Mizzou football. So congratulations to Virginia on getting themselves a Gator Bowl victory, 11-3 finish to this season. Let's now move on to another team here, and this team is actually a bit disappointing. This team let the ACC down this season, but to be fair, and we're talking about Clemson here, it shouldn't always be about Clemson in the ACC. It really shouldn't. They've been carrying the mantle for far too long in this conference. We've needed another team to step up. Granted, Miami seems to be doing their part this year, but Clemson in this game, I mean, they tried against Penn State in the Pinstripe Bowl, and they lose 22-10. I feel like this game just defined Clemson's season in a nutshell, where they have talent, they have players, and it never materialized.
You know, this is a true fact. This is a true fact here. As much as we want to talk about where the blame lies, and a lot of people want to blame Cade Klubnik for this thing, and everybody keeps pointing to the David Hale tweet about the quarterback records. Have you seen that tweet, Jackson?
Remind me of that tweet.
So it's a tweet about the quarterback records at Clemson, and it has Cade Klubnik's record and every other quarterback who started at Clemson from 2014 to 2022.
Yeah, all those quarterbacks, I'm sure, had ridiculous records, and then you have Cade Klubnik with all those losses.
Cade Klubnik is 26-14. Every quarterback between 2014 and 2022 is 110-15. Now, here's the thing. It is partially on Cade Klubnik, but this is why I say it's never just on the quarterback. Because those other quarterbacks did not have to deal with Dabo Swinney and antiquated ways holding them back. By and large, they did not have to do that. Dabo Swinney was doing the new ascending, rising thing when most of those other quarterbacks were there, when Taj Boyd was there, when Deshaun Watson was there, when Trevor Lawrence was there, when Kelly Bryant was there. They were here. They're going up. This plane is clearly taking a landing at this point in time. And I think that we can all agree it lays at the feet of Dabo. He had the opportunity to change. He has the resources to change. He has the resources to do this a different way. Losing to a coachless Penn State team, you want to talk about opt-outs? You want to talk about guys in the portal? You want to talk about guys who don't have their guys? Losing to that Penn State team. Tyler from Spartanburg needs to get back on that line. Tyler from Spartanburg needs to get back on that line and give Dabo every single thing he could ever ask for, plus some, because he's earned it at this point.
I was going to ask if it's fair to question if Clemson's ever going to return to the same glory it once had with Dabo Swinney. I think you just answered it right there. Until they decide to play the game that everyone else in college football seems to be playing, I don't think Clemson's ever going to have the same upside like they used to have. It's not to say that Clemson's done, Clemson's finished. They're never going to have good seasons. They're never going to be able to win the ACC or make a college football playoff, but Clemson in its heyday was one of the few teams that could win a national championship. This is a team that beat Alabama in its heyday twice in national championship games, one of which was a complete beatdown with a true freshman quarterback by the name of Trevor Lawrence, but still, true freshman quarterback against Nick Saban, completely shredded them in a title game. Those days appear to be beyond. It's like it's just not going to happen. Like, yeah, they were in the playoff last year. They won the ACC, but they were not a serious threat to win the national championship. This year, we thought, like, okay, they brought back so many of the pieces that they had last year, and they were a good team, so they should be good this year, and it never materialized. And here you had Dabo Swinney. He's not really using the transfer portal a whole lot. It just seems like with Clemson, for one reason or another, they don't seem to want to adapt to what is going on. I think they know what's going on. I'm not going to sit here and accuse Dabo Swinney of not knowing what's going on in college football, but it just seems like for whatever reason, he's like, no, I know that my way used to work, and he's just being too stubborn, and he refuses to change. He doesn't want to tamper like literally every coach in the country is doing. He doesn't want to go out and use the transfer portal. He still believes that this is 2017 and that you go into high school and you get the recruits and you tell them you're going to stay here for all 4 years and we're going to win national championships. You can do it to some extent, but you need those other pieces from other teams because that's what other teams are now doing. So unless Clemson plans on having the number one recruiting class every single year, I just don't see how they're going to be able to return to their former glory.
Even if you do have the number one recruiting class every year, there are going to be misses. Recruiting is more art than science. We get it. You know, if you look at championship teams, they do have the most blue chip prospects and whatnot, but you also need to go and supplement places where you do have a miss or two with a high quality portal guy. And even beyond that, there is, and I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, but I will say there is a shift happening in college football in general to where everybody's always talking about, oh, we want guys who want to play football, not just guys who are chasing the biggest check or whatever the case may be. Here's the reality. Some of those teams that have the squad full of mercenaries, guys who are chasing the biggest checks, they're running laps around you. So maybe you do need some bag chasers. Maybe you do need some guys who are, if those are the guys who can get it done on Saturdays, and I know that sounds counterintuitive. I know that sounds bad. All I'm saying is if you're Dabo Swinney, you have to figure out something because we're in a results-based business. That's the reality. What matters most to people here is the final score. It's a lot like what Will Wade was talking about the other day with NC State, where he said, we have great academics, which I love because I'm from an academic background, love the great academics. We've got nice guys, but we're running a competitive basketball program. And we need guys who are going to get these things done on the court that need to be done. What Dabo has done in terms of making their program holistic, making sure that guys who are injured and out for the season still feel included, making sure that everybody graduates, making sure all of those things. We can never take away how he revolutionized the totality, the holistic approach to not only building football players, but building young men. We can never take that away from him. But what we can say is definitively the product that he is putting on the field is not to the standard which he created for himself. It's nowhere near there. So he has to figure out what needs to change for me to get back there because realistically, I don't know how long he survives at a place like Clemson where now winning is the expectation. Winning big is the expectation. Being atop the conference is the expectation. The belief about this team coming into the year was this is going to be our first ever undefeated champion. And lo and behold, we still are not going to have one in this playoff era so far. So, that's just what we're looking at.
Is he on the hot seat for next year?
I wouldn't say next year. I'd say it's warm. I'd say it's getting warm, but I don't think unless he wins like 4 games next year. Like if he has another year like this, I think the next year his seat will be hot. But I don't think 2026 will be a year where it's like, all right, Dabo, win us 10 or you're out of here.
Yeah, he is certainly a candidate one day to be a victim of his own success. Yeah, you win so many games, you win titles, you win conference titles, and then you stop doing that. Even if you're still putting out decent results, nobody's going to sit here and say, 7-5 and making a bowl is a terrible season for most teams in college football. But when your program was once the number one team in America for many years, Yeah, it's pretty bad. If Alabama suddenly became that, what do you think Alabama would do with Kalen DeBoer?
Exactly.
Like,
Clemson used to be one of those schools, 8 wins a year would have gotten you a statue. They're no longer that because of Dabo. 8 wins a year gets you, hey, it's been real. It's been fun. We're going to pay you a nice little severance.
you can join us here on Locked On ACC. Woohoo!
There you go.
Call
Dabo, we
David
got a seat for
Lockmore,
you.
see if you can get Dabo Swinney on line 1.
There we go. Let's put it in the call.
All right. Well, coming up, we got one more bowl game to talk about over the weekend, and then we'll give maybe some initial thoughts on Miami and Ohio State. So stick with us here on Locked On ACC. Fridays always feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel is making them even better. Every Friday night before the game tips off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited-time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action even starts. The timing is perfect. It's right before the games and right before the weekend starts. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. One more bowl game to talk about here on Locked On ACC from this past weekend. We got Pitt and East Carolina in the Military Bowl. This is a game where the ACC is not exactly proud, but to be fair to Coach Narduzzi, after East Carolina won 23-17 and Pitt finishing 8-5 on the season, I don't think Pat Narduzzi cared all that much about this game because it was not against an ACC opponent, right?
Pat Narduzzi, as much as I like the guy, this season has me walking away questioning him more than ever. How you lose to a significantly less talented Eastern Carolina, how you lose to a significantly less talented East Carolina team with significant losses of their own in terms of not only coaches, but also players. And I get it. You've got opt-outs and all those things, but it just seems to me like there is not enough emphasis around that building on we need to win everything we do. We need to win everything we do. It started with the whole, Notre Dame could beat us by 70 and it wouldn't matter to us. I want to just let y'all in on a fun little secret about what the difference between that is and how I have said this for a very long time, and nobody ever wants to believe Ken about this, but it is the honest to God truth. Since the statement of we could lose this game by 70, I could care less. I want to win the next 2. Do you know what their record is?
Well, they lost to Notre Dame, then they won the following week against Georgia Tech. So it's 1-3.
Correct. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I rest my case. Loserville begets losing. Loserville mentality begets losing. You want to win everything. You should want to win every single thing. Everything. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a power walking competition. I don't care if it's a wing eating competition before the bowl. I don't care if it's a who can pack the most lunches for the underserved communities before the bowl game. I want my team to win all of it. All of it. There isn't a win some, we could win here and not win here, because if you're picking and choosing when it's okay to win and lose, what do you think happens with your players?
Oh, it gets amplified. It gets worse for the players.
And now the Pirates are sitting there dancing on your grave 23-17 after a win, which, again, they had as many, if not more, guys of importance in their 2 deep sit out as you. And yet you could not get the job done. This is the one black eye that would keep me from saying the ACC has had an excellent bowl season so far. This is the one black eye where I'm like, there's no way you could spin it. There's no way you could propagandize it. There's no way you could, there's nothing you can say about this loss to make it better. This was just a flat old whooping by a team that showed up and was more prepared than you on that day. So shame on you, Pitt, for letting that Loserville nonsense invade your team.
Well, I'm not going to blame the players. Because at the end of the day, when you have a head coach that simply doesn't care, and he doesn't, then it's not on them. Well, imagine if like your local mayor was like, you know what? I don't really care about the city. I don't really care about the city during these months. I care during these months, but not during these months. Like, what do you think is going to happen to the citizens of that community? You think they're going to care about the city either during those months? Like,
No.
You're only as strong as what your leaders are. And when you have your leaders saying, well, we could lose to Notre Dame by 70 and it won't matter, which, spoiler alert to Pat Narduzzi, it does matter because you can win the ACC. And as we learned this year with Duke, still not make the college football playoff. So Pat Narduzzi, maybe next time actually read the rule book and understand that the rules this season, we're not saying power conference champions. It was the best conference champions. Next year, I believe it does change to power conference, but that's another conversation for another day. I would have fired Pat Narduzzi after those comments. I would have definitely fired him after the game against Notre Dame, but it's Pitt. And Pitt is happy with their 8-5, and most programs in the country would take 8-5 every single year. So they're not going to fire Pat Narduzzi. In fact, they're probably going to announce a 10-year extension for Pat Narduzzi for the fact that he went 8-5 this season. And Mason Heinschel, I think, has a bright future with that program. So I'm not going to sit here and say they're completely screwed and they can't be relevant in the ACC. But just I can't envision them being more than what they are when they have a head coach that's just like, you know what? We could lose this game and be okay. We'll be fine. It's all good and dandy. We don't need to beat Notre Dame. We can lose by 70. We can lose by this. We can lose by that. It's a bowl game against East Carolina. Who cares? If that is your mindset, then it's like, okay, so what's your mindset going to be actually when you play in a meaningful game when it matters? You're that good. You're that good of a coach where you can flip a switch. You can flip a switch. Really. Like that's how it is. Imagine if Nick Saban said something like that. No, imagine. You think Nick Saban would ever say something like that?
We got a better chance of seeing folks in hell wearing a mink coat.
Yeah, pretty much. It's just I feel for those Pitt players, and I would not blame a single one of them if they decided to transfer out of that program because that coach, I don't get it. I don't get it with him.
You and me both, brother. You and me both. He's the duality of a coach. Last Coastal coach to win an ACC championship. He is the best of times and the worst of times in the coach all in one. And it's just like, why are you like this, Pat? Why?
Does he love the game?
I think so. I really do.
Does he love the game or does he not love the competition of the game?
That's a great question. That leaves me with something to chew on. I'm not going to lie to you.
I should not be asking that question about a head coach of a football program. Do you love the game and do you love competition? Say what you want about Fran Brown in Syracuse. I can promise you Fran Brown loves the game and he loves the competition. Dave Doran at NC State, you can criticize him all you want. You're not going to question whether or not he loves the game or whether or not he loves the competition. No. Do any coach right now. Can you ask that question about them? No, it's assumed. You know that they do. They may not win. They may not have the results, but they care. Pat Narduzzi, I don't know if he really does. I straight up don't. And he's just like, okay, I'm good at where I'm at, and that's it. I'm just getting my paycheck now, and we're going to go 8-5 every single year, which is fine. It's fine at Pitt, but he's never going to be more if he continues to have that mindset. So I'm moving on from Pitt and East Carolina. Sorry to all the Pitt players. Miami, Ohio State, quick preview here. What are your thoughts initially on this matchup? Obviously, we'll dive deeper into it tomorrow.
I still believe the line sits at 9.5, which is quite interesting to me that there hasn't been any motion up or down in the time since this game was announced. Honestly and truly, I still feel very similarly to how I expressed before, in that I believe that Miami has a better chance than people are giving them credit for. I just think that Miami team or that Ohio State team is too stacked at too many places. But again, love me some Miami. If they got it done, I'd be the loudest person screaming outside of Dade County that, hey, I told everybody they have a chance to win this ball game because I've talked about this before. That is a young Ohio State team. Every time we've seen them off a layoff against the top team, their offense looks like they are stuck in the mud. And so would I be super shocked if they resemble that same kind of sluggish, lethargic offense and Miami is able to potentially get a win out of that? A little bit, not really. But ultimately, I think that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be that rock fight. that Ohio State barely comes out on top in.
The fact that the line hasn't moved at 9.5, it tells you that the books got it right.
Yeah, we'll
the books
see.
got it right. The public is thinking the exact same thing. And when you have a 9.5 point line, I think it's assumed that you're giving the other team a chance to win. Yeah. It's not Ohio State by 3 touchdowns or something like that. It's Ohio State by the equivalent of like 31-21. And if you lose a game 31-21, chances are at some point in that game you had a legitimate chance to win it.
Oh, 1,000%.
The way I see it right now, we're a couple days out. I wonder if Miami is going to be able to score some points.
Yeah.
Because I do think that Ohio State's offense may be sluggish, like you were saying, but I have full faith in that Ohio State defense to shut down basically anyone in the country. If they can hold the Heisman Trophy winner down to 13 points, a guy who's going to be going to the Las Vegas Raiders in late April, I think they can handle Carson Beck and the Miami Hurricanes, with all due respect to them. So I just wonder if Miami could even get to 17, which I think is going to be the number for them at minimum in order to win this game.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all. If the idea is this game is going to be a race to 17, that's the type of rock fight I'm expecting. And can Miami get to that 17? That's a very good question, because Carson Beck, while he did not turn the ball over against Texas A&M, were you blown away by his performance?
No, but he didn't have to be like great. So you give him credit for the win, but it's like, if he does what he did against Texas A&M and he does that for the Ohio State game, does Miami win?
Probably not. No.
And Ohio State is a significantly better defense than Texas A&M.
But I will say, Carson Beck's stats in that game got kind of deflated by some turnovers that didn't have a ton to do with him. You know, if we take away that Tony fumble, how does the rest of that drive very likely go based on where they are field position-wise and everything, right? Like that, they had momentum. They were moving the ball. Things kind of happened the way they did. So I think the books and the fans have it wrong here. I think America has it wrong, and I'm okay to go up against the word and look insane, but I think Miami has a much better shot than a 10-point spread or 9.5 point spread would indicate.
Well, we will give more thoughts on this game tomorrow here on Locked On ACC. I'm Jackson Holzer, host of Locked On Syracuse. Kenton Gibbs, host of Locked On NC State Wolfpack. And speaking of which, we will be back tomorrow to preview Miami and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. And folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe. Tell all your friends about Locked On ACC, and we'll see you all again soon.